Hello. How are you doing today? Doing all right? Good. That's what I like to hear. I'm doing all right myself. Thank you very much for asking. I am going to enjoy making this recording. Just yesterday, I made a video about Eric Clapton. I hope you got the chance to view it, or at least you know that there is such a video. And before that, I made a video about Eric Clapton and David Gilmour. And as I was saying that it is my intention to make a video about either artist, today I am making a video about David Gilmour. So let me begin by saying that of all the artists who are singers and guitarists, David Gilmour is my favorite. And this opinion has not changed since the first time I listened to the album The Division Bell. That was the very first Pink Floyd album I ever listened to. And that would have been, many years ago. So, in these 25 years or more, actually, David Gilmour has continued to be my favorite guitarist. And he has beautiful vocals as well. So as I'm making this video, I might use the words Pink Floyd and David Gilmour interchangeably as if it's one and the same thing. It's not the same thing, of course, because David Gilmour joined Pink Floyd at a certain time and has continued to be the lead member of Pink Floyd. But David Gilmour also has had a solo or independent career as a musician apart from Pink Floyd. We'll get into those things in a little while. But a little bit about David Gilmour as an artist. That is what I focused on when I was making the video about Eric Clapton. Same thing I'm doing about David Gilmour. David Gilmour's full name is David John Gilmour. And John is spelled as Jon. Gilmour, as you know, the correct spelling is Gilmour. If you sometimes see people spelling it as Gilmore, that is not correct. So David Gilmour was born on March the 6th, 1946. And just yesterday we got to know that Eric Clapton was born in 1945. So David Gilmour is a year younger than Eric Clapton. Just a year younger. And we already know that David Gilmour came to prominence as the guitarist, singer and songwriter and member of the rock band Pink Floyd. So if you've heard about Pink Floyd, you've heard about David Gilmour. What can one say about the music of Pink Floyd? If you've been listening to rock music since the 70s, Pink Floyd became that phenomenon that became world famous. It's not only about fame, though. They had this idea of taking a concept and then making an album around that concept. So every song was dedicated to explaining that concept through music. So whether we're talking about The Dark Side of the Moon, or Animals, or The Wall. Each one of those albums expresses the concept that is the title of the album. And in any one of those albums, if you listen to, say, The Animals, and you listen to the songs Sheep, Dogs, Pigs, and those are like stories being told. And the part where David Gilmour comes on in his guitar solos is as much an integral part of that story as anything else in that song. David Gilmour is that guitarist for whom the guitar is not just an instrument. It is this man can express his emotions through the guitar strings in mesmerizing ways. Sometimes you may hear people say that they know a good guitarist or a great guitarist by how intensely or how fast they can play the different notes on the guitar. There is no lack of intensity listening to David Gilmour, but it was never about speed, never. It's about carrying that note, stretching it out, and the subtleties in the expression. And in a number of videos, when you watch David Gilmour play and you see his the fingers of his left hand on the guitar strings, and him picking with his right hand, you see a beautiful coming together of precision, expression, feel. There's always a feel. I've often thought that if you can give that same guitar that David Gilmour is playing, put it in the hands of another artist, and it would be very unusual for another guitarist to get that feel from that same guitar. Even the idea of the kind of notes to play. Certain songs. Well, let's talk about some of his songs, because this is a good time to talk about songs. Take, for instance, Shine On, You Crazy Diamond. If I remember correctly, it has 9 parts. It just continues on, of course. And you look at those opening notes, or when David has played it on the stage, and there is such a deliberation in every note. And you have to marvel every time you listen to Pink Floyd how everything comes together. When the part comes when David is playing the guitar or his vocals, either way, that merges into every song, but at the same time, it's also outstanding. David is an exceptional guitarist. He has such a following that those who listen to him can see how he is exceptional. One of the genres that he has played the guitar for, he has played it for progressive rock, for psychedelic rock, for art rock, for ambient music, and for blues rock. And if you look at David's career apart from Pink Floyd, even if you look at those very early works, like there is an album by his own name, David Gilmour, on which you can tell, even though the recording instruments and the technical aspect of music continued to improve and evolve in the years after, but you can tell by listening to that album that David has a beautiful way of playing the guitar. There's another album, About Face, again by David Gilmour, apart from Pink Floyd. When you come to one of his more recent works, On an Island, it's the kind of music that transports you to a totally different experience. And although I don't like to compare artists, it's natural to do so. And I did make this remark earlier, and although this video is about David Gilmour and not Eric Clapton or a comparison, but I find myself making this observation that Eric Clapton, as good as he is not for me ever at that depth or that comprehensiveness that David Gilmour is at. This is strictly personal preference. And there would be people who put Mark Knopfler or Eric Clapton above David Gilmour. I've listened to, of course, all of them and many other guitarists, but as I said, David Gilmour is my favorite guitarist. That is my preference, my choice. Coming back a little bit about his accomplishments, Rolling Stone magazine counted David Gilmour as number 14 on their list of the greatest guitarists of all time. And Planet Rock voted him as number 36 in the greatest voices in rock. Let's talk a little bit about his music. I mentioned his albums, but then let's talk about a few tracks. Rattle That Lock is one of those recent tracks. The Girl in the Yellow Dress, very smooth, mellow music with the older David Gilmour. But even when you look at David when he was much younger, he had that meditative quality to his music. And that has stayed with David all these years. You listen to that song, On an Island, or Smile, or Faces of Stone. In every one of those songs, you find that meditative, contemplative aspect in his music. Of course, other than his enormous success, apart from Pink Floyd, I have personally always thought of certain songs by Pink Floyd because of David Gilmour. So a song like On the Turning Away or Comfortably Numb or Echoes. When you think about these songs, and if you listen to these, what is that thing that makes the song memorable for you? Well, to be honest, of course, the thing that makes a song memorable is how everything comes together. But if you had to put in a hierarchy things that make every one of those Pink Floyd songs outstanding, you'd have to say that the guitar solos by David Gilmour is that part. It should not take away from the contribution of the other members of the group, like Nick Mason or Richard Wright. It shouldn't take away from what their contribution was. But it so happens in music also the fact that the lead vocalist, who also happens to be the lead guitarist, is at the forefront. On a stage, he would be standing at the very front and people would be focusing on him. So it has happened this way. So the contribution of David not only is more noticeable, but even when you listen to the audio and you're not looking at a video or watching him perform, you can't help but notice his contribution. You listen to a song like High Hopes or Coming Back to Life. It's if you take away what David Gilmour does in those songs, you don't have a song anymore. You need David Gilmour for those songs to happen, to be what they became. And they became beautiful. Let's talk about an instrumental track, Marooned, no words. It has a beautiful video associated with it. But if you just listen to the audio, close your eyes, listen to the audio, and it is one of those songs where without words, it can easily transport you. I would use the word effortlessly transport you to a different world and a different experience. And that is what David Gilmour can do. Put a guitar in his hand. The Fender Stratocaster is what he plays. And without having to say a word, and I believe not even with some fancy equipment, art just flows out of him. It just effortlessly flows. With all those years of playing, rehearsing, practice, the tours, of course, you become so proficient. But David Gilmour, is he a virtuoso? Somebody told me not to use that word loosely, but I want to use that word for David Gilmour, that he is a virtuoso. I don't know if he thinks of himself that way, but I think he is. I can't think of any one song to pick because every song where he has played, you'll find something special. But yes, this reminds me. A couple of his albums which are live performances. Live in Gdańsk and live in Pompeii. And remember I was saying about Eric Clapton that he's one of those artists who shines while performing live. David Gilmour most certainly is one of those artists who shines when he's performing live. And you get to see the greatness of the artist in his live performances far more than in the studio performances. And I do remember in one interview, you have to listen to some of the interviews in which David Gilmour is expressing himself. And you see he is so intelligent, and it is charming listening to him. It's charming when you listen to him play. It's charming when you listen to him sing. And he is charming and such a gentleman when you are listening to a conversation with David Gilmour. So yes, in one of his interviews he mentioned that he enjoys playing live because of the audio setup. He said, if I remember correctly, and I wouldn't remember which interview he said that in, that when he's playing live and there are those huge speakers behind him, and he comes to the part where he is about to begin his solo, he said when he hits the guitar string, the sound blast that comes out of the speaker is so powerful, he can almost lean back against the blast of sound that comes out of the speaker. Sometimes in a video you can notice he takes just half a step back the moment the solo starts. And that's actually him leaning back on the sound blast coming from the speaker. And he enjoys the power that he is able to use when giving those performances. He enjoys playing live. People enjoy watching him perform live. And again, in a live performance, that's the thing that strikes me as interesting. You think that an artist would improvise in the studio. But David Gilmour improvises when he's playing live. A song like Comfortably Numb or On the Turning Away. You don't know how long the song is going to be. It could be a minute or a couple of minutes longer than the studio version. Or even on the Pulse album, which is a live performance, and then they remastered it later. The artist, David Gilmour, is expressing himself live. And all the other artists that are with him are eagerly looking at how David Gilmour is going to express himself. I just thought of the song Sorrow. A masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. So when he's playing these epic songs live, the artists who are with him consider themselves privileged, and they find it an absolute pleasure to be in the company of this great man, David Gilmour. But I have never ever found David Gilmour trying to be in the limelight at the expense of his fellow musicians. No. when he's performing, he's very focused on his part. But you will find him break a little smile to his fellow musicians, whether those are backup vocalists or Nick Mason on the drums. And it's a beautiful smile he gives to his fellow musicians in recognition and acknowledgement of their role in making that performance, making that song possible. So I can go on, really, about David Gilmour. And mind you, this entire recording is unscripted, it's spontaneous, and I've said things as they came to mind. But as I said, I can go on about David Gilmour. I could pick every one of his songs and spend a few minutes, maybe longer than the song, in admiring the song. But that's what you get when you have listened to an artist for a quarter of a century. And David is a treasure for humankind. And his music, and the music of Pink Floyd, like many people have said, is going to last forever. David's music is going to last forever. And some have remarked that if ever aliens make contact with humankind, or there's a possibility that aliens would visit the Earth, send some of the music from Pink Floyd and David Gilmour as an example of what humankind has done. And it would resonate even with extraterrestrial alien life. I think there's truth to that. I'm suddenly going to end this recording. This is a dedication to David Gilmour as part of and apart from Pink Floyd, the wonderful artist, the magnificent guitarist, and my favorite from the day I first heard his music. Thank you very, very much, David Gilmour. Thank you for all that you've done for your music. And thank you also for your company and for your time. And I'll see you another time with another video. I don't know what the subject would be, but if it's music, chances are David Gilmour would feature over and over again in videos related to music. So thank you very much for your company. Goodbye and take care.